Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for Season 7 of the NHL Coaches Association Mentorship Program. My name is Hannah Turnbull, and I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing and Operations here at the NHLCA. At the NHLCA, one of our main goals is to support the development of hockey coaches at every level all around the world. That commitment is what led us to launch this program back in 2020, and we're thrilled to be entering our seventh season of mentorship, education, and connection. We know how important mentorship and professional development opportunities are for a coach's growth and career advancement, and our NHL and AHL members know how meaningful it is to give back by sharing their experience, knowledge, and passion for the game. And we're so proud to make that possible through this program. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly run through a few housekeeping notes. Today's webinar will run for about an hour, where Bob Woods will spend the first portion of the session walking through his presentation on coaching fundamentals, how to manage as a coach, and we'll wrap it up with a Q&A session. If you have any questions throughout the session, please type them into the Q&A box located at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll collect those and do our best to get through as many as possible during the presenter Q&A period. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and the recording will be available shortly after we wrap up in the NHLCA Content Hub. Okay, it is now my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Bob Woods. Bob has over 20 years of NHL coaching experience across the WHL, ECHL, AHL, and NHL. In the NHL, he's coached for the Washington Capitals, Anaheim Ducks, Buffalo Sabres, Minnesota Wild, and Seattle Kraken. Known for his defensive expertise and steady leadership, he's guided the AHL Hershey Bears to a Calder Cup championship in 2009. In 2025, he reached his 1,000th NHL game as an assistant coach and was inducted into the ECHL Hall of Fame in 2012 for his accomplishments both as a player and a coach. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today, and I will now turn it over to you.
Hi, glad to be here and always interested in helping out, especially coaches that are trying to move up and find their way through. It's a great business to be a part of, and I've been fortunate enough to have it as a career. As far as the presentation here, I just wanted to do something different, like a lot of times, you're doing power plays or penalty kills or defensemen or other things. So this is just something which I think's a huge part. And myself, I coached at the East Coast level, I was actually a GM as well. So, I had to manage a lot of different things. And then when I moved up to the AHL, even when I took over as head coach, Bruce got promoted to the NHL, and I was there to take over, so I had to do it by myself for about a month, which was a lot of work and a lot of things. So you had to really manage your time and everything there. You kind of had your hands involved with everything. So. And at the NHL level, it's just another thing where there's a lot of things you have to manage that aren't just X's and O's. And that gets us into the presentation here. So just coaching fundamentals, managing as a coach. Why is coaching more than just X and O's? Coaching involves more than just systems and drills. It's about leadership, regardless of the level. And I didn't put minor hockey in there, but that's another level here as well. Junior college, minor pro, and in the NHL. The principles of good manage apply. So just getting into what our responsibilities are as a coach. It's player development and it's skill and it's also their mindset. Like you have to work with them, all the time, trying to improve their skills. And then the other thing is just managing the way they think and how to handle different situations. The other thing is game strategy and preparation. So that's preparing for your opponent and just getting a game plan to whatever you plan on doing to help give you the best chance to win. The players still have to execute it, but you got to give them a plan to do it. The one thing I think is really huge is just creating that team culture. This is the environment that you want to set up. And I know when I was a GM and coach in Saskatoon of the WHL, the big thing there was just we wanted to come up with something that, was part of our culture, and we called it Blade Factor. And it was something that we discussed with our scouts. And this is something when they went to look at players, this was a big part of their grade. I think we marked it maybe 30% of their grade, and it was just looking at players and seeing what character they have, because character is a big part, especially of having success. You want to make sure you got as many quality people involved, and those are the ones that you can have a lot of success with. So we put a lot of emphasis on that, and we blacklisted a lot of kids that were really good hockey players, but maybe their attitudes weren't where they needed to be. And again, that was how we wanted to create. And then just the morale of your team. How do you handle the ups and downs? Like, you're going to go through them. There's going to be parts of your seasons where things just aren't going well. How do you handle that with them and keeping them positive? Or when things are going really well, how do you handle that? You don't want guys to get comfortable. You want guys to stay focused, and that's part of dealing with the morale part. Managing information. And this is a big part because analytics and video has been a big part in your meetings. So you're managing, how long, how much you're using, how much are you showing, because you can show a lot and you can do a lot, but again, different levels, different attention spans, and you got to read your team. Like, when do you need to use the analytics? When do you need to show video? When don't you need to show video? There'll be times where we won't even do a pre-scout video. We'll just go in with the analytical presentation and use that as of identifying weaknesses of certain teams or things that they do really well. So, and then that comes down to your meetings. You don't want to talk too much. The guys have to play the game. And, I think when you try to present too much, not a lot gets retained. So you want to manage how much you're showing in all those situations. And then the communication with players, staff, and parents, that's a big part as well. And we'll get into that, but it's just making sure communication is a big part in this day and age. And you've got to spend a lot of time with it, and you want to make sure that your players are well informed and know where they stand. And I know myself as a player, I always wanted to know if the coach was happy with me or if he wasn't, and you knew what you had to improve on. So I think it's very important to really do that, and managing the expectations and any conflicts that you're going to have. So managing expectations is just, you know, you get a lot of pressure from the outside. You might have general managers that have strong hopes and stuff, and you've got to manage that with your players and really present goals that are attainable and things that we can do moving forward, and not putting something in there that's unrealistic. And then the conflict part is more or less, you deal with that. You're in a competitive sport, you're going to have conflicts, and how you deal with those as well, which we'll get into more later. Coaching requires balancing short-term performance and long-term, so development. So there's a lot of management of that. How much do you put the pressure on winning games as much, or the balance of development? And a lot of that you see in the minors. A lot of teams are more focused on the development of players than actually winning. I'm a believer in developing in a winning environment. I think you want your guys to know what it takes to win and what it takes to be a part of that. So we put a lot of focus on that. So we've got to manage that. And you're a teacher, you're a mentor, you're a psychologist, and you're a manager, all in one. So it's a lot more than, again, the coach or X's and O's. Uh, just coaching at different levels. I didn't put the minor pro in there or minor hockey in there, but the biggest thing there is you're dealing with a lot of skill work and just develop them as skaters, because you got to be able to skate in this game, and you're just making sure it's fun. We want to make sure hockey's fun because you want to get as many people involved as possible. So create that fun experience, and it doesn't just happen at the minor league level. It happens at all levels. You want to create an environment that guys want to be a part of. So we put a lot of focus on that. So just at the junior level, the kind of the key focuses at that level are skill development. Okay, so you're working, whether you have, depending on your schedule, you want to have some skill days involved there, so it's not all just system stuff. And then you have the competition. So, there's pressure to win. So helping guys deal with that, and trying to get the consistency where they're competing and a consistent because that's a big part of moving up the levels as well. Structure and exposure. So you're, creating the structure of your team, and the exposure is you're trying to present opportunities. So at the junior level, you're trying to help guys get drafted. And the one thing, with when I went back there, I had the experience of being around NHL coaches and NHL GMs and scouts. So you kind of know the things that they're looking for, and you can pass that along to the players. And it was a big, I wish I would have had that when I was playing at the junior level because I was pretty green when I turned pro, and there's a big eye opening, and I wish I was more prepared for that experience. And then just the introduction to physical development, where you're starting to do the off-ice workouts, so you're maintaining your strength and building strength, which is a big part. The challenges our parents. I've heard that before. That was one thing that they warned me when I took over in Saskatoon there, but it was never an issue because, again, if you communicate, that's never a problem. You got to deal with the shorter attention span. So, how much information can you give the guys? They're sponges, they want to learn, but how much can they retain? So that's always a challenge. Player commitment, some guys, they're still in that window. How bad do they want to be a pro player? How bad do they want to move up? Or are they just here for a good time? So you're trying to manage that part of it. And then the identity formation, what do they want to be? What can they be? What type of player will give them the best opportunity to move up? And you don't want to handcuff them at all, but you want to leave it open, but you can definitely guide them in a direction that will help them, give them the best chance to move up. At the college level, key focuses are skill development. Again, the lighter schedule, so there's a lot more opportunity to work on skills and do a lot of extra stuff. And I know my son played, both sons played college, and that was one thing. They had a lot more time to develop. And I noticed it, especially in the physical development. My son went to Wisconsin and he went the summer for a couple months and he came back a lot different. So there's a lot of opportunity there, especially if you're a late bloomer or a guy that just needs more time. It was good for them to really have that opportunity to grow. The performance is also, a level, you got to win hockey games. Everybody wants to win. The discipline part is probably the biggest thing. Going to visit my sons at college, there's a lot of distractions there, and they have to kind of, they got to be self-disciplined. So you got to really help with that. And then the recruitment's a big part of college, and where the coaches are responsible for helping that area. Challenges, again, are balancing academics and hockey. It's one thing. My oldest boy played prep school, and I thought the biggest advantage of that was just giving him an opportunity to, because, they're pretty serious about school and managing that along with hockey. And I think it shows the colleges that you can handle that type of workload. And then the off-ice distractions. Again, there's lots going on at colleges and lots of things you can get into, but just making sure they keep on the straight line there. Minor pro level, key focus there are skill development. Again, your schedule's a little bit lighter, but not much different. So you still you want to develop skill levels and, probably, more wall battles or just a lot more specific things that are going to be important for them to make the next step. Results are again a big part of it because you got your AHL GMs and they want to have success, and there's still managing the part with the NHL GMs who want you to develop. So you're managing that all the time, managing the life skills. A lot of these kids come from junior hockey where they've lived with billets and never had to cook meals for themselves. And, we had an experience. I know when I was in Hershey there, we had a couple young kids from junior and they're living together. And you're wondering, they come down from Washington and do fat tests, and guys' fats are up a little bit higher than they should be. And a lot of that's just because not eating properly and just probably not cooking for themselves. So you got to make sure you're making sure the guys and that teams have done a lot better job of that, where they're supplying breakfasts or even lunches for the guys. So at least they're getting a couple good meals in there. Challenges, agents is always a challenge. So if a player's not happy, he's talking to his agent. You're usually hearing from your GM and trying to figure out how do we keep everybody happy here. The affiliations, again, I touched a little bit on that. I know when I was coaching in the American League, you've got a GM that puts a lot of emphasis on winning. You got to manage that with your NHL team who's wants you to develop some guys. But the one thing I was fortunate enough to was to have a GM there who was developed on their what they deserved, and that was nice to have that as a coach. So you had a little bit more freedom of sitting guys out or even sending guys down to the East Coast levels just to get them a better opportunity. So that's a big thing. Media probably starts to come in now where you're doing interviews, so that's a big part too, and you want to help your guys know how to do interviews and make sure they're saying the right stuff and not saying the wrong things, because we know how that goes in this day and age. Workload is another. We're managing just, if you have a heavier schedule, maybe you've got have a week where you might have 4 games, so you got to manage the workload. And a lot of times the strength coaches help you with that, and they can tell you when guys need a little break or who needs a break or whatever. But I think that's a big part of you as a coach, recognizing your team, know when they need a day off or when they need to be pushed a little bit. So that's part of managing as well. And then the travel, it's the bus trips in the minors or even some flights. It wears on you. I know at the NHL level, especially out on the West there, travel was a lot tougher, and you've got to take that in consideration when you're making your plans for the days or even the weeks. At the NHL level, the big pressure is wins. People want to have success. You get pressure from fans, you get pressure from the ownership, who just kind of trickles down. So you're trying to really putting yourself in a situation to have success, but you're also trying to develop as well, specializing. It's just, where do you fit guys? Again, how, it's one thing to get to NHL. It's hard to get there. It's hard to stay there. So, maybe you're working with players, you're making them a penalty killer, or you're making them a checker or whatever, but you start do more specialization with players and even as coaches. You're maybe taking care of certain things, and that's just managing where everybody fits. Again, the culture, which we touched base, is always a big challenge at that level. You've got people from all over the world, and you're trying to bring it into a system that really has a chance to do a lot of success. And then you really lean on your leadership. Leadership is a big part. I think even at the minor league level, having good experienced guys to show the young guys how things are done and how you want them, and it really benefits. I know I looked up to a lot of older guys when I was a young guy playing, and watching how they acted and how they handled situations and how they prepared. So I think leadership is a big part, and making sure you have the right people and communicating with them as well. There's times where you might say you want a day off the next day, and they might come and say, no, we need to practice. So if you have a good leadership group, you can really lean on them a lot. And I think the biggest thing as the coach, you want to be able to hand the team over a little bit to your leaders where they're managing what you're presenting. So that's a big part. The challenge, again, is media. They're always looking for something to stir up. So how you handle those situations at the NHL level, you deal with a lot of egos. You got guys that think they deserve certain things, and you've got to manage that and keep guys happy and keep everybody a part of what's going on here. The high pressure, again, it's tough at that level. You look at the standings even this year, how close every division is. Like there's not a lot of wiggle room, so you're pushing all the time, and managing that high pressure is a big thing. I think that kind of falls into the results versus the development. And again, we still want to develop at the NHL level, but you're still trying to win. And sometimes you have a GM maybe wants to push a younger guy into a situation, and you've got to balance that a little bit. Again, the workload is even more important at that level. There's a lot of hockey, especially in these four nation years and the Olympic years where you're cramming a lot of games into a short period of time. So you got to really manage the workload, and then the travel, same thing is a big part. And some teams have it a little easier. The East is a little bit easier than the West, but it's something you got to manage. Building a coaching philosophy. So you want to define your core values, okay? Accountability, work ethic, respect. These are all big things, and you want to make sure guys understand how you want things done and what you expect, and just have this common respect for each other. You show respect to your players, and they, in return, usually show respect to you. And I think you have to earn the trust of your team and even your players individually. They need to know that you're going to protect them and you're going to help them and you're going to give them the best opportunity to have the most success. So that's a big part, creating a clear vision for your team. So make sure that they know what our plan is and how we want to get there. And we'll probably get into that a little bit later here. Stay consistent but also adaptable. So you want to, be consistent with your expectations and how you want to treat certain players and stuff, but also you have to be adaptable, and there's a lot of change. I know as coaches, we're always looking to steal things from other teams or other coaches and maybe make it your own, but you have to be adaptable. And what might have worked last year might not work this year. So you might have to change some things. Um, and focus on the process and the results. So again, stick to what you're trying to do, but you're also focusing on those results because that's a big part. So your philosophy becomes the foundation for how you manage as a coach. Players will reflect on the tone you set. So this is important because it happens in the locker room. It happens on the bench. When we get excited as coaches, our players get excited. And I think it's important to keep your composure. There's going to be times where maybe that's hard to do, but you have to do it because the minute you start yelling at refs or yelling at players, your focus isn't right. The players aren't focused on the right things. They're yelling at the refs as well, or maybe worried about their teammate or whatever. So it's very important to keep your composure, and that really has a lot of effect on whether you have success or not. Managing players effectively. So this is a big part as well. Understanding personalities and motivations. Every player is different. How do we get the most out of each player and bring it into the team concept that you're doing? So this is a big thing, and there's a lot of varieties. Some guys need you to be a little bit harder on them, and some guys need you not to be hard on them and need more support. And that comes with communication. Like I like to always talk to, if I'm working with the defenseman, I talk with them all the time. What do they need? How can I help them? How can I make them better? You got to put a little onus on them as well, but at least you get some answers of how they like to be handled, and that goes a long ways. Clear communication is another thing. What, why, and how. So you want to know what we're trying to accomplish. We want to know why we're trying to do it, and we're going to show you how we're going to do it. So you want to make sure you're clear on those messages. Provide feedback, specific timing and constructive. So, I like to talk to my defensemen after every game. So when we're skating around the ice, the next day in practice, I want to grab each of them and just have a conversation. If you can't get it all done, you can do it after practice as well. But just letting them know what you thought of their game, asking them what they thought of their game, maybe talk about things that they need to improve on or that we're missing or need, and just getting to know them if there's anything going on off ice or away from the rink. So just creating that relationship and then creating that feedback so they know where they stand all the time. And they might not always like to hear what you're saying, but again, you're being honest with them, and that's the other thing. Just be honest with guys. They don't want you to sugarcoat things. Like even with my boys, when I call them after a game, I go, "Do you want dad or you want coach?" And they always want coach because they want the honesty and they want to know what they need to do to get better. So always make sure you're that way. And then role definition. Everybody needs a purpose. So I think in a team environment, it's very important for everybody to feel like they're a part of it. So you got to give them the roles. And sometimes, you'll see it a lot. You'll have an offensive guy coming from junior or college, or even a player coming in a trade to a different. There might not be room. Or even you look at the Olympics or the foreign nations. You've got players that are usually top guys. They have to realize where they fit on your team, and you have to make sure that you're making everybody feel important and that they're a big reason of why you're having success. And I think when you do that, guys will give you more. Um, every player is different. Your job is to figure out that and how to apply it. So again, we talked that a little bit before, and some players need a push and others might need support. So just getting to know your players, huge part of coaching. Managing conflicts. Again, we're in an environment where it's a heavy compete, heavy pressure, physical game. You're going to have conflicts. And the biggest thing is stay neutral and composed. Okay. Address the issues early and privately. If you can handle it one-on-one with guys, great. If you have to take things to the team, you do that and make sure you listen. Listen to hear their side and what they feel. And I like to do that even when I'm showing clips to a guy. I want to know what he was thinking in that instant. Okay. And then second, then you can respond and tell him your thoughts, and then we'll have to figure things out. But be transparent. And the big thing is being fair. You can't sit a guy out who maybe is a lower guy on your team and then have your more experienced, better player do the same thing and not. And again, you treat guys a little bit differently, but when it comes to certain things, you got to be consistent on what you believe in and make sure you send that message, because conflicts are evident in a competitive environment. Handle them with respect, as it will strengthen your team culture. And again, it's all part of that culture, which is huge. Managing your staff and delegating. So this is a big thing, and I've had some really good coaches that have been good at this. So the big thing is hire quality people. Like, you see us so many times where maybe people feel they're scared to hire somebody either more qualified or maybe more successful because they're worried it might be an insecurity. I believe in surrounding myself with the best people I can find because they're going to make you look better, and you're going to learn. You're going to learn from them because we're always learning. We want to learn all the time, and surrounding yourself with the best people you can find is the best way to go. Define roles. So just make sure everybody find what they're good at or what they're comfortable with, and making sure they're in charge of certain things. And again, as the head coach, you're going to be overseeing everything, but you want to put people that know what they're doing in situations to give you the best chance to have success, and hold each other accountable. This is a big thing, just like we do with players. Like in our meetings, you can challenge each other and you can question things and you can battle about that. It's okay. But the big thing is make sure your message is clear and on the same page. So we can battle, but when we leave that room, it's important that we're on the same page. So I'm not saying one thing and my assistants are saying something different. That doesn't work. That shows your players that you're not on the same play page, and that doesn't go over well. So, and then the big thing is just delegate, like give people, like I'll say when I worked with Dean Evison in Minnesota there, like we talked to the players almost as much as he did, and I think it's important because I know as a head coach, sometimes you talk a lot and you get tired of hearing yourself and it becomes a little bit monotonous. But when you're having different people come in and we're all saying the same message, but maybe it's a little bit different on how we do that. So make sure you delegate and let people do parts that don't be so micromanaged, I guess is the best way to put it, because I think it's important and it helps your coaches develop too. Like that's one thing I can say is, you get more confidence as a coach when you're given more responsibility, and being able to go address a team between periods or even after a game is huge as an assistant coach because it shows that your head coach is giving you a voice. And when you're talking, it matters and it's important. So I think that's big. We talked about the rest of that. So the other important thing, and this is, with parents and upper management relationships, and at the junior level, it's parents. So it's holding meetings and having the parents involved in it where they can understand. I never had an issue with parents because I communicated with them. Even if I was sending a kid down or trading, at the junior level, I'm calling the parents first to let them know that this is happening because when you talk to the kid, you know who they're going to call, and you want to make sure that they're there to support and they understand the situation and why it's happening. And it just helps deal with that situation because it's not easy for these kids. I've had a lot of kids in tears in your office, and it's a tough thing at that level. So to have their parents informed and prepared to answer, have that call come and know how to handle it is important. At the management level, I think it's important to have meetings too. I know in Minnesota, we had meetings with our general managers and some of our scouts and just showing how we want to play. I think it's important to inform your management what you're expecting of your players and how you want them to play. And it also is beneficial for them because they can know if a guy's doing what he's supposed to be doing out there. He's not doing what the coach is asking him to do. So can this guy play in a system? It's very helpful for them in managing or developing players as well. Set expectations early. So make sure, again, when you're having these meetings, you're talking to these people and telling them what is expected, and they know right from the get-go what our goals are and where we want to go, and they can watch and see if we're following what we've said we're trying to do. Talk about plans for development goals, winning goals. So these are just things that, if we're trying to get a player to get to a certain point or a certain level, or just creating that winning environment, those are the things we're focused on. And always be approachable, but have boundaries. So you don't want parents coming to you every game or whatever, or your GM coming in after every game and talking. There's times and places, and again, the communication is huge. And I think if you're communicating properly, it's never going to be an issue. Parents and upper management need to be your allies, but need to be informed and respected. So that says it all there. And the biggest thing is the communication. It's usually when you have problems is when you're not communicating properly or you're not given the information that needs to be given out. So that's always important as well. Uh, so key takeaways here, coaching is managing people, emotions, and performance. Your leadership sets the tone at every level, and your team success is built on relationships, trust, and clarity. And I can't stress enough. I know when I did this presentation over in Europe, that was the one question, what was the biggest thing? And I said the trust part. Like your players have to trust you. They have to know you're going to put them in the best situations to have success, and you're not going to put a kid in something that he can't handle because it's not going to be beneficial for him or yourself. And I think when they know that they can trust you, they're going to go through the wall for you. So that's one of the biggest things for me. Know your level, know your players, staff, and yourself. That's all important things. You got to know how to handle certain levels, how to handle certain players, and how to manage your staff. And then you got to manage yourself as well because, it's a lot. Like you're in charge of a lot, you're managing a lot. You're managing your body, and we always said the rest is a weapon. And I believe in that more. Like if you're a coach that wants to hang at the rink all day, when your players come back after after a morning skate for the game, if you've been there all day, you're going to look like you've been there all day, and you're not going to have the same enthusiasm or excitement, and that will it'll go towards your players as well. So make sure you're getting the proper rest so you're coming back refreshed and ready to go, and that'll go a long ways. All right. The conclusion here, the best coaches are always learning, adaptable, and open and aware. Okay. Coaching is one of the most influential roles in a player's life. So own that responsibility with pride. And I believe in this wholeheartedly. Like, I think of a lot of the coaches I played for, they made big impressions on me. And I've taken a lot of that with me along the way, and even as a player and as a coach, so, and a manager. So, very important. So that's about all I have. So again, I think Hannah's going to open it up to questions, and I can handle anything you want to throw at me, I guess.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I think that was a very great way to segue into our Q&A with rounding it up with your key points and your conclusion there. But one of the last points you did said is rest is a weapon. Oftentimes, our NHL coaches, they say they like to read books, they exercise themselves. Do you have any things or like, I guess maybe superstitions or areas where you focused on to reset, regroup, reset?
Well, I do like to work out every morning. I think you're setting a good example. One, if you're asking guys to be in shape, it's important for you to do that as well. And it's just a chance to kind of, you can put the highlights on and you get to watch what was going on around the league. So it's a nice thing to start. And I think the biggest thing is finding a way to turn it off. So when you're getting home, you're not bringing your work with you. You have an opportunity to focus with your family and just get away from the game a little bit because again, as coaches, we probably think too much sometimes. And I think sometimes it's healthy just to do something different and just get away from it for a little bit. And I think you're always more refreshed when you come back.
Okay, well, I love it. We'll kick right into the questions that have been submitted. So if anyone online wants to submit some more questions, just use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. So question one, what does your typical day look like for yourself personally on a practice day compared to a game day?
Well, practice days, again, you're coming in, again, all the coaches, we work out first, probably have a little breakfast, and then usually we try to meet at a certain time. We'll try to have a set time, maybe 8 o'clock. Because the biggest thing is we want to be prepared. So when our players are coming in, they know what's going on. They know the schedule, they know who they're playing with in that day, or just all these things. I just think in making sure that we come in looking prepared is very important. And again, you're going to talk as a staff. You're going to decide how much we need to do, what we need to work on, whether we show video, whether we don't. So you're looking at that. And then the practice plan. So what are we doing today? How long do we want to be out there? And then your practice is usually whatever you try to figure, but try to keep it around the hour or less, especially in the NHL, because let's face it, guys don't really want to practice that much at the NHL level. They like playing games, so you got to manage again that workload and stuff. But and then I think you use some of that time after practice maybe to show. Like I usually talk to my D and say, do you rather see clips before or after practice? And you might have some individual meetings with guys, just showing them clips on the previous game or just certain things that you want them to work on. And again, just that communication where you're touching base all the time. And after that, we might have another meeting just to decide what the game plan is for the next day. If you have a game coming up, what's our lineup going to look like? What's our schedule going to be? Whether we need to have a meeting or not, or because you're usually trying to avoid the three meetings on at the same time. You're going to have your pre-scout, you're usually going to have a PP and a PK meeting. So managing those as well and what the plan will be for game day. And then for game day, it's more or less the same thing: workout, breakfast, meeting, have your skate, whether a lot of times they're optional. So figuring out who needs to be out there or who doesn't, and And then just nothing, just any guys that want to be out there, just a little touch up there. And then usually we try to get rid of one of our meetings. So either you'll do the PK or power play usually in the morning, and then go home, have a little nap, a little dinner, get a little rest, and then come back rejuvenated. And then we usually try to do our pre-scout meeting and the other special team meeting. And again, if there's any more, sometimes when you got back-to-back games, you might do some individual clips before the game too. So it's usually a balance trying to get everything done, but your days are usually pretty full.
Okay, perfect. And then segueing into this question is, this coach is asking when a team flies in and you land at like 1 or 2 in the morning and then you play that night, how different is that game day structure compared to being at home or like a couple days in between games? How does it differ?
Well, that's a great question, especially on the road. A lot of times we'll try to, like, we'll meet as a staff in the morning and we'll usually decide if we want to have a meeting early, let the guys sleep a little longer, or when we have that meeting. Again, we try to get one meeting out of the way if we can. Sometimes if it's you're getting in really late, especially on the road, you might wait and just do everything at night. But if we can avoid that, we try to. And it's not easy. It's you got to be probably a little more prepared. So you got to work a little bit ahead so you're prepared for both games because it's really tough, especially on a back-to-back, to go over the last game and then prepare for the next game as well, especially if you're doing any special teams or other responsibilities. So it can be challenging, but again, we always find a way to get it done. And again, that comes into how much, sometimes you don't need to show video. We can just maybe show a few clips of something we did well and try to stay consistent with that. So again, just managing your team.
On the topic of meetings, what are the meetings that a head coach typically runs, and what are the meetings an assistant coach typically runs? Although I do know from previous conversations with coaches on these webinars that it kind of varies by team. So, in your experience, can you just speak to that?
Well, again, different coaches. I know when I worked with Bruce Boudreau, he liked to do power play as well as the pre-scouts. It's just something he was comfortable with, and he was a very offensive player who was very good at power play stuff. So he did a good job. So it was good to see. Other coaches try to spread it out. We have a lot more assistants than we used to have. So now you can pretty well give each assistant a special team, either power play or PK. Usually the head coach does most of the pre-scouts, or you might rotate it with one of the other assistants that doesn't have a special teams. Sometimes even the video coaches run them, and I've worked with a lot of qualified guys that can do that. Especially last year in Seattle, we had two guys that were very comfortable doing them, and so that kind of helps out too. Again, it takes away the monotony. It also helps a head coach because head coaches, especially at the NHL level, you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions with media and a lot of PR stuff and stuff like that. So sometimes you got to hand some of the stuff over. And I think, guys, again, that comes down to that thing we talked about of delegating and trusting your coaches that you work with and letting them have a voice as well. So yeah.
Perfect. You mentioned in your presentation one-on-one meetings. Can you just walk us through how you would conduct a one-on-one meeting with a player from how many video clips you would use, but then also on the opposite side, how many clips back do you watch of that player?
Um, well, a lot of guys, we send them their shifts. Like a lot of guys want to look at their own shifts. We do that through Huddle a lot of times. So guys will have their laptops and they can go on there and watch. And a lot of times I'll just pick certain things. If I thought a guy struggled on his entries or exits or whatever, I can pick something. Or maybe the head coach might have a few clips that he noticed that, hey, make sure this guy sees this. But a lot of times you go in there and you're walking with your computer to the guy and he's already knowing which clips you're going to talk about. And that to me is exciting because you know that they care and you know that they're absorbing what they're watching and they have questions. And a lot of times I go into a meeting, I want to hear what they see in this situation because as coaches, the game is very simple sometimes. We have the pause and play buttons and we can slow things down and I want to hear how they see it under pressure. You know, it's a lot, looks a lot different on their angles, especially when you got the game going on in front of you. So it's always interested to hear because our sport is a reaction sport. So you want to see what they saw, and then you can see how they reacted to it. And then we're going to obviously say how we would like them to react to it. And when they get in that situation again, maybe they'll handle it differently. But you can actually, like I liked as when I was running power play, I like to talk to a lot of the guys. Just I can look at video and watch a pre-scout, but I can see what their tendencies are, and I can advise guys on that. But at the end of the day, I want to hear what they're seeing. Like, what do they see when they have the puck on the half wall? What looks available to them? Where do they feel that they're getting pressured? So you can communicate a lot of that. So a lot of the individual, and again, you kind of adjust your meetings and how many clips. A lot is depending on what your head coach is showing. Is he showing a lot of clips? Is he touching on? And sometimes it might even be the same clip, but maybe the head coach didn't talk about what you wanted to talk to the defenseman about. So it varies. And again, it's just how much video have you been watching or how much we've been watching as a team, and you kind of adjust from that.
And is all your video kind of picking out where like they can make improvements or changes to their game, or do you include a lot of positive video as well?
I believe in a lot of positive. Like, you're going to show negative, but I always want to finish with especially positives. And you want to show what's successful. And that can even be in a scout for the team. You want to show what we're doing well, and this is why we're having success. Or vice versa, you can show things, okay, this is why we're struggling, and these are all beneficial. And players, I like to show a lot of our own clips because guys focus and pay a lot more attention when it's clips of our group. So as much as you can get, clips that have your team against the opposing team, I would use those more than any.
Okay, keeping on the meeting side, seems to be a popular topic today. How long are your meetings typically? Do they like, is it based on how many clips you have, or do you try to keep it to like 3 to 5 minutes? Do you want to just walk us through that?
Yeah, like so a lot of like special teams, I know we try to keep it as close to 2 minutes of video. And then usually you're talking, if you can keep it within five, because again, you got a lot of meetings going on. And again, they're only going to retain so much. So you want to make sure you're really focused and touching on the key points that you want to get across. So, as a coach, it's hard. We always struggle a little bit. We call it weeding. So you're trying to knock some clips off and you love your clips. And I think sometimes as coaches, we almost want to show too much because we want to cover everything. And I don't think that's the right approach because, again, they can only retain so much. So make sure you're focused on the points that you really want to do because if you start throwing too much at them or if the meetings are too long, and again, your scouts are going to be a little bit longer and your post games might be a little bit longer, just on depends on what you're trying to touch on. But a lot of times I think you just kind of try to pick certain parts of the game that you thought you struggled. There's certain parts of the game that you thought you had success in. And again, just managing how much you're showing. That's the key.
Okay, perfect. Next question. For either before practice or after practice, what are some skills that you work with the forwards or defense specifically?
Well, you see a lot of with the forwards, especially, is a lot of board work, taking pucks off the wall, making plays from that. A lot of offensive, like shooting, handling pucks and getting shots off, or just protect puck protection. You work a lot with. On the D side, it's probably, walking off the wall, getting shots, maybe little escapes, when you're trying to exit the zone, how can you get away from the pressure? So working on a little bit of that stuff. And just, again, your skills with your edges, are things that you can work on. I like to focus on guys keeping their head up, making simple plays, making, I think really pushing, especially even at the younger levels, making guys pass the puck hard, I think is a big thing. Like pass the puck hard because guys need to know how to handle it because every level you go up, the passes get a lot harder, and you got to be able to handle that and you got to be able to make them because guys are so good with their sticks. If you throw a soft pass, it's probably not getting there. So those are things you work on. And again, a lot of just communication, talking. What do they want to work on? Like I put it on them. What do you feel you need to work on? And, I'm not going to chase guys around to work on things. I will tell them that if there's something you need to work on that you feel, let me know and I'll help you with it. Or if there's something I think you need to work on, I'm going to do that and we're going to come up with something. And again, you want to have a little variety with it, but a lot of times you're working on the same skills.
Love it. Next question. Do you have any advice in dealing with a player that affects the team consistently in a negative way? For example, body language, comments to teammates are constant, even after discussions with the player and the team.
Yeah, it is a part of our game. And again, that comes back to what I talked about. You try to avoid those type of players as much as you can. But again, in the development thing, you've got to try to help them. Like I know my son, for instance, call me and they might be complaining about a teammate or something. And I'm like, well, help them, teach them, make them better, And I think everybody's different. I think I always, as a captain, I'd always, if I thought somebody was doing something that wasn't beneficial to our team, you're going to pull him aside just by himself and you're going to have a communication with them that, hey, this has to change and this has to be better. And you hope you get through to them. And again, it's about the presentation, how you do it. Some guys you got to maybe stand up in the locker room in front of all his teammates and blast them that way or make comments. Again, it's something I think is important because it definitely affects your team when you have guys that aren't good teammates and are negative in their body language or they're slamming doors and I don't like to see that as a coach and it's something I think you have to get on and get on it early. I know even my oldest son had a little problem with body language and that's one thing that I thought his coach, especially in college, really helped him with. And it just made him realize, like I try to tell him, like when your body language is bad, you're emphasizing the mistake you made or the things that are going on. And a lot of times people probably won't even notice your mistake, but because of your body language, you're exposing it. So, and I think sometimes when you explain that to them, sometimes it makes sense to them. But, they're all important things to do. And that's again part of creating that culture. And hopefully your leaders can manage it for you because you're not around your guys all the time, whether it's off ice, in the locker room. You don't see everything that's going on. So you really depend on your leaders to police that more or less. And I think it goes a long ways from with a leader coming to you over a coach.
It's oftentimes we hear that the leadership group is sometimes an extension of the coaching staff in certain areas, as you mentioned, they're in the locker room on a daily basis with their teammates. Next question. We got a few left if you're good on time.
Yep.
Perfect. As coaches, how do you manage your relationship with referees and how do you relay that to the team?
Well, again, I've always had a pretty good reputation with the referees that I was pretty fair. You're going to have times, and sometimes you get excited, but it's because your team is flat. So maybe the ref's not helping you any, but you can tell that your team is. So maybe you got to get a little excited once in a while. And most of the time, if it only happens every so often, the refs are going to be okay with that. But to me, the approach, and again, how you talk to the refs, like to me, I liked even if you see something and you are complaining about it a little bit, and then you go back and watch video and you realize you're wrong. It goes a long ways when you pull that ref over, that linesman over, and say, "Hey, you were right on that call. I was wrong." And so it's just managing. I think, it's kind of like even with centermen, if you want to have a linesman allow you to cheat a little bit, you better be good to him. You better be nice to him. You better not be giving them crap all the time because they can really control a lot of how you win draws or whether you get a little bit of an advantage or not, or where they throw the puck. So the same thing is with coaching and refereeing. It's just like if I'm upset and I'm yelling and screaming, I don't expect the referee to come over and talk to me. But if I'm calm and I need to have a conversation with them, I expect him to show me the respect. I'm showing him respect. He should show me respect. And let's have a quick conversation. I know they want to keep the game moving, but sometimes there's just a question that you have, and a lot of times you'll see it even with the challenges where you might not be 100% sure on a ruling, or and sometimes you just need that clarification. So I just find the communication, again, the presentation is probably the biggest part of it because guys, usually if you're good, they're not perfect. They may make mistakes too. And I think when you understand that, you probably give them a little more benefit of the doubt.
Love it. Next question. How do you keep players not in the lineup regularly working hard and positive?
Again, that comes down to that honesty. And again, it's not, sometimes they don't like what they hear, but at least if you're honest with them, they know why they're sitting out. And their question should be, okay, what do I need to do to get back in the lineup? And that's what you want to hear. And the biggest thing for me is even when guys got sent down, I'm like, if you think you're going to come down here and pout and be upset and you think they're going to feel bad and call you up, you're wrong. You got to go down with an attitude that you're going to show you don't belong at that level, or you're going to show that, hey, I'm working hard and my coach is going to be, I want to make it as hard as possible for him to sit me out. So that's the communication I give guys is work hard, work on the things you need to work on. And trust me, you're going to have a better chance of getting the lineup doing that than moping around or showing a bad attitude because most coaches don't want to put that in their lineup anyways.
Okay, next question. What is one mistake you see coaches make when trying to manage personalities?
Well, if you try to, like some guys probably try to treat everybody the same way, and that doesn't work. You've got to handle guys, and I think again, the relationships and communication is such a big part. Like getting to know your players. Like we always said, if our exit meetings were longer than 5 minutes at the end of the year, we didn't do our job during the year, and that again, we weren't communicating enough and letting guys know where they stand and where you want them to be. And again, it's just creating that path of what you think they're capable of doing. And probably it's more than what they believe, but making them believe that and then pushing them to get there. And again, I tell guys all the time, if a coach's not talking to you, he probably maybe doesn't care that much about you. If he's on you, he might care about you, and it's a good thing. And again, we want to help all our players, but players have to try to help themselves a little bit, and trying to manage that is our job. It's probably the most important job we have is knowing our personalities and how to get the most out of them and how to put that all into a team concept and make sure everybody feels a part of it. And usually if guys feel like they're contributing, they're going to buy into whatever role you give them.
Okay, last few questions. How has your coaching approach changed since you first started coaching?
Um, well, I think just you got to adapt with the times. Like I know the analytics now is a big part, and I know when they first came out, it was almost like stuff hard to understand. So you probably didn't believe in it as much, and now they've made it more coach friendly, and you can see a lot of value in it, and sometimes it maybe can be too much information, but I think just getting up to times with that has helped because there are things that we look at, and we had our analytical guy in Minnesota. He sat in all our meetings, and he was actually part of the staff, the general manager's staff, but he was a great liaison to be able to communicate different messages. And he had a pretty understanding of what was being said in both areas. And if anything needed to be added, he could do that. But, just taking some of the analytics can replace some of the meetings, right? The video sessions, because you can just more or less read it off the board and say, these are the things we have to do to have success tonight. And these are the things they do very well, and we have to find a way to neutralize those things. So I think just probably using analytics to more of an advantage has been a big thing. Um, and just how to deal with different players in different situations. I think you learn all the time, and I think that's your job is finding out what works for certain guys, and I think that's a big part of coaching. I think that's helped me a lot as well.
Perfect. Well, I always end our webinars with like a similar question. So, you've had a ton of years of experience both as a player and a coach. So, sitting where you are now, looking back, what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you started your coaching career?
Um, well, even to go back to the playing, like just having that confidence and a little bit of cockiness. Like I think I was very humble coming into, especially as a player, where you're almost in a wow situation. Like, how am I here? How am I doing this? Is this real type thing where you should be coming and believing that you belong and you're here for a reason because you're good at what you do. And I think just that confidence thing, which I know some people like it, some people don't, but I believe it's part of what we do and believing in the decisions you have to make because I think that's one of the biggest things as a coach is I like to listen to everybody's input, but as a head coach, you have to have the confidence to do what you believe in as well. But you take the information, so you're making an educated decision, but believing in yourself and your qualities. And sometimes it's a gut feel. You got to trust that. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. And then just the relationships with your players and how to get the most out of them.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us here today and rush home from your curling this morning, but definitely appreciate all your learnings and expertise you shared with the group today. So thank you and wishing everyone a very happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays to everybody. Keep working hard, and hopefully everybody gets to where they want to get to.
I